Hey everyone, welcome back to the Leadership Locker. In this episode, we have Sue Ellen, or Sel, S-E-L, Watts, all the way from Australia, but she's actually in New York because she took a huge risk, and that is the premise of this episode, which is taking risks in entrepreneurship, the whys, the hows, the decision processes, all of it. So thank you very much for joining. This episode is sponsored by Cardona Media, where we love to make sure that you're visible. If you have value to bring the world, you should be visible. Use video. We can do it all. Film, edit, distribute for you. That being said, I know everything that's going on out there. I hope everyone is staying safe and try and keep the crazy to a minimum. Be optimistic. We got this.
Basically, I'm an entrepreneur. I started my first business when I was 30. But up until I was 30, I had no idea really what I was doing. I was trying to find my thing. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I somehow stumbled on the concept of being a business owner, because back then entrepreneur was not the word that it is today.
Correct.
Yeah, it was actually a dirty word. Like it's dodgy people that stole money from people. So you never use that word.
Yep.
I was a sole practitioner or a business owner, very, very boring.
Mm-hmm.
And I started a business because I hated an industry. So I had been in the human resources people industry for a very short amount of time, and I really didn't like it. I found it very underwhelming, not dynamic at all, but I truly believed that there was a massive impact that people in the HR space could make in a business if they could think commercially and they could understand what a business was actually trying to achieve, rather than being the counsellor or the policeman for the staff. And so I found that I'd got into this industry and I was so underwhelmed, and I hated going to networking events, and I hated anyone in the industry. And so rather than leave it, I thought, I'm going to change this industry, or I'm going to disrupt this industry. And that was a time when disruption wasn't a buzzword either.
Yes, exactly.
But I was like, I'm going to change this industry, and I'm going to specifically change it for small to medium businesses.
Yep.
And so I basically started in my spare bedroom in this tiny little in Australia, we called it a worker's cottage, a tiny little house. My first son was 3 months old. I had no money. I had very little experience in the industry. I had dropped out of college or university 3 times, so I didn't have any qualifications. I hadn't grown up in like family business or anything like that. It was the start of the global financial crisis. I had nothing. I had literally nothing. So if I'd asked someone's advice, should I start this business? Anyone would have said no way.
Yep.
But I had 2 things. I had enormous amount of naivety. So I was just like, I had no idea that I didn't have any of these things. And I didn't realise that what I lacked. I didn't know.
Which is a blessing in disguise.
Absolutely, and an absolute blessing. And naivety to this day, it's harder when you've got more on the line.
Yes.
But I really try to embrace that.
You had everything on the line, though.
I did, but I have a lot more on the line now.
Yeah, yes.
So, I was sort of starting from nothing, and so I had this naivety, and then I had this vision. I was like, I'm going to build an international business. I'm going to change the way small businesses utilise HR, and I'm going to inspire, develop people, and I'm going to do this in my spare bedroom with nothing.
Yep.
And that was, when I look back, that was really all I needed. That's all I needed. And there was no social media back then. There was nothing. And so I created some things, and I went out and sold my wares, and it was just simple. It was really simple. I just did traditional business, and I stand by that today, actually. I still think that business is business. Like, it doesn't matter whether you are some high-flying tech entrepreneur who's raised all this money. It's still business. It's still the same as the mum and dad having the corner milk bar or whatever. It's just business. It's like if no one wants to buy your product, you're not going to be in business very long.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might raise money, but you're a fundraiser. You're not in business yet.
I completely agree. Let me back up then. This is so perfect. Like, what is the risk in being naive and being guns blazing? I just said on a post I made recently, like, I'm unemployable. This is option A, and this is option B, and this is option C. Like, that's fucking it. So Now, and I talked about how it's a blessing in disguise to be naive about it, but tell me the risks about being naive, about approaching a business and starting a business in an industry that you know nothing about without being qualified.
Yeah, so I have to say that naturally, as a person, I have very little aversion to risk. And so...
Why?
Well, I think now, when I look back, I didn't have anything when I was growing up, and I was in an environment where my friends did. So I'd been put in an environment, a schooling environment, where I was the poorest kid. And so what I saw was that everyone had all this stuff that I didn't have. And so I knew that if I wanted to make anything of myself, I was going to have to do it. I also had a lack of security and safety as I was growing up. And so I also learned that and you know, this can be seen as sad in some ways, but I have taken it as a positive. But I learned that I couldn't rely on anyone, and that I needed to look after myself. And there are certainly things about me as a person now that is not a good thing, because I put a moat around myself and I push people away and I do all of those things. But I've certainly used the positive side of it, because I've been like, I will be independent. A man is not a financial plan, and I will back myself. And I think taking risk, it doesn't matter how much market research you do, it doesn't matter how many safety nets you have. At the end of the day, the main thing you've got to have is you've got to back yourself. You've just got to believe in you, and that you can do it. And that not 100% of the time, because you won't. We all have our self-doubts all the time. But if you back yourself enough, then I think that the risk becomes controllable. Because when you look at things that are not controllable, so say, for example, market, or even the people you might engage, or you know, how well your product is going to be received, etc., etc. There's so much of that you can't control. And so it becomes scary. It's like, oh, I don't know whether I should do this, because I don't know, that might not work, and there's all these things that you don't know. Whereas when you put it back into you and go, if, like what you have done, if I do the work consistently, and I can always learn and grow, and I listen to people, and I also don't listen to people, and that's been an important element too, then I can control that. I can control how hard I work. I can control how much work I do on my self-esteem and mindset. I can control those things, and so the risk is reduced.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think you just said it, and I'm going to paraphrase, which is believing you have a safety net, or really good market research, or the most unbelievable staff of all time, and some of these external forces under control is actually, to me, a little bit more risky than just depending on myself, because I know how I can deal with X, Y, and Z. I know if I completely lose it, then this is how I'll figure out my options, or that I'll just figure it out, period. So that's one thing, but let's take it further. So you started to have success, and I'm going to try and fast forward a little bit, but we met last year. Things have been thriving for a while, and we met last year here in New York. But why were you here in New York when you just had all these good things going on in Australia?
So I ended up building the business up, and that was a really interesting journey. You know, I just learnt so much, and I had some really, really tough times where I nearly lost everything, and then times when I was just cruising and I thought nothing could ever go wrong. You know, I really went through everything. I've had amazing staff that have helped me build the business. I've had staff that leave and have taken my clients. I've gone through everything. Massive relationship breakdowns, lost important people in my life, all of those sorts of things, and I've had 3 kids at the same time. So it's been an incredible journey, and there was some tough times towards, at points where I was like, questioning whether do I want to do this anymore. And I went and got into partnership with some other entrepreneurs, and have started other things since then, which is a new challenge for me. But what happened was I came to New York quite late in life, as in I think I was like 35 the first time I came to New York, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've found my place. Like, I feel like I'm on the same frequency. And the weirdest thing is that I felt calm here. Like, I felt like all my nervous energy and anxiety and all of those things that so many entrepreneurs have, I got here and I was sort of like, and people say, how can you be calm in New York City?
Yes, it's completely counterintuitive.
Yeah, and I just felt that I was on the same vibe, and I kept coming back, and I was like, I am just in love with this place. Like, I just love it. And anyway, a couple of years ago, I came over and brought my children over, and they're like, Mum, this is your place. You need to live here. And unfortunately, I didn't have, being a business owner, it's, there is so much freedom attached to that, but there's also a lot of things that restricts as well. Mm-hmm. And so to come and move to New York from Australia, if I was working for KPMG, no problem, put in for a transfer, they pay for my family to move over, they pay for all the costs, put us in an apartment, pay my money, get me health insurance, no worries. I mean, it's still unsettling for the kids, get them into school, whatever, but it's pretty much done for you. Mm-hmm. When you are a business owner, it's nearly impossible. One, financially, it's nearly impossible because of the exchange rate, for one, but also the whole process of trying to get here. And so I went, okay, well, how do I do this? And the only way I could work out how to do it was for me to come over first on my own. Mm-hmm. For 12 months, and ended up being 18, on my own, and commute back to Australia every 6 weeks to see the kids, mm-hmm. and then get them over. And that 18 months was... So the plan sounds good.
Yes.
And I've thought about it a lot, and I really don't think I could have done it any other way unless I'd had a huge amount of money put in mm-hmm. front of me. I don't think I could. I couldn't have done it any other way. But man, it was emotionally and mentally and physically taxing. Like
I saw, and when I was like following and saying, and you're just like going, I could just see you going to a lot of holistic things, and just I feel like manage. I don't know if this is the right way to say it. Manage your being to just acceptable levels of tolerance, like what you could let in, what you could let out, and everything like that.
Yeah, because it nearly broke me.
Yeah. I mean, I had the feeling, but again, we hadn't seen each other or talked, but it was very tangible. So then, but you did it, and then here we are now.
Yeah, and they've been here, so what are we, beginning of February, so they've been here 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Yeah.
They've been here 6 weeks.
Yeah, the kids have been here 6 weeks.
Tell me about that and the stress level, and you have a business and you have partnerships and all this stuff. Like, there is inherent risk. Like, we're being super fucking real right now. There's risk in, robbing Peter to pay Paul, or all these different things. Like, how do you deal with that? Like, because I'm sure right now, as a father of a newborn, and I have 2/3 of the kids you do, but it's stressful.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
So it is a complete reality that this dream could lose everything. And I remember I told you when mm-hmm. we caught up that I said to the kids, there's 3 things that could happen.
Yep.
1, I could come here and smash it and just achieve all my goals, and we just live the most amazing life. 2, it is an interesting experience. I learn a lot, but I have to go home.
Yep.
And 3, I lose everything. And all of those are very, equally could happen. And I said to the family, these are the 3 things. So how do we feel about that? I'm all for it. Let's do it. And they were like, you got to do this, Mum. Like, it's just. But the thing is, I think the reason, so people look at that and say, a valid reason that's equal to all the others is you could lose everything. The reason that I can swallow that is because I've never relied on anyone else. Mm-hmm. So I believe that I can build myself up again. And so, like you and like your audience, they're starting from scratch.
Yep.
Again, starting.
It's disorienting. It's visceral. It's fucking crazy.
It's so scary.
Yeah.
And, but I really do think that life is long. Like, I really think we've got so much time. And I also think life's short. Like, I think it's too short to not have a crack. But then it's too long to be going, oh my God, I'm not happy and I'm going to just live like this forever. But also, we have this time. So if we have this amazing experience but it doesn't work out. It's an amazing experience, and then I move on to have another amazing experience. People think that if your experience doesn't work out as planned, that then you have failed.
No.
And so people go, I don't want to fail. But I never look at that. I just think experience, another season of my life. So there's so many things I've started and then gone, this isn't as cool as I thought it would be. And people have said to me, oh, so you failed when you opened that office interstate. And I'd be like, I didn't fail, I just didn't want to do it anymore.
This is so important for this audience, because let's imagine I am a transitioning service member and I'm not looking to be an entrepreneur. I'm just looking to do whatever it is. I was a pilot, and now I'm looking into different jobs, corporate jobs, finance, dental. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? There is a stigma that I believe here, and I don't know if it's the same way everywhere or Australia, that like if you come into this industry or you come to this job and you leave because of the innate gut feeling that like, this isn't for me, okay, well, all of a sudden you're a job jumper. Like, that's really risky, because now people are going to look at your resume and be like, what a fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
What's going on with it? I don't want that person. They're just going to leave me too.
Yeah.
So talk to me about why you don't look at it like that, and why you're able to conceptualize these events that you choose not to continue as learning.
Yeah. So I think that, so there's two elements to that. One is how they may be perceived by employers.
Yep.
And I think that I started in recruitment, and so 15, 20 years ago, we would look at that. Because the way that we worked was different. We would stay in our jobs 5, 10, 20 years. Whereas now, and I say in my business, if we can keep them for 18 months and we have them at high performance for the entire time, then we've got to be happy with that. So I think now employers aren't looking at resumes with the timeframes like we used to 20 years ago. So I think that isn't so much of an issue. But in relation to trying things and then going, I don't want to do this anymore, this still comes back to people's obsession with the word failure.
Yes.
And I never think about it. Because it's like, I'm just on a journey of my life, right? And I don't know how to do this next thing. It looks cool. It looks like I want to do that. And then I go and do it and go, that's not cool. So I'll give you an example. Here's a good example. So with my consulting firm in Australia, I had a vision to scale it big, like VaynerMedia big. 1,000 staff around the world. That's what I wanted to do. And I kept getting to a point, and I was just like, I couldn't get past it. And I was like, everyone was saying, you can't scale a service business as well. You can, because look, they're all around. KPMG, PwC, all of these companies, so you can. And then I was talking to my mentor, and I said, why can't I scale this business? Because I know it's possible.
Well, I want to stop you for a second. Why did you want to scale so badly? Like, what was it? This is so important for entrepreneurs. Like, what? Like, because were you in a rush? Was there a summit that you're like, if I could get to this number, this is going to make me really happy, and I feel like I've made it?
It was, so there wasn't a number. It was, there was two elements. One, there was the element of I believed that the more workplaces that I could get into and make great, the bigger impact that I could make in the world. So you've got that part.
Yep.
And then there's the I want to show myself that I can do this.
Yes.
I want to show myself that I can do this. And to me, at that point in my life, and I think very differently now, as I'm sure most people do as they go through their career, that to me was, and back then, having a global scaled business was, a number of reception desks around the world, and because that's how life was. The only way you could really be a global brand was by location, on the ground. And I said to my mentor, why can't I do this? Like, I know it's possible. And he said, so the job that you need to do what you're saying is people, training, processes, and that's how you're going to scale your particular business. And I was like, I hate that. I would never apply for that job. And he said, exactly. And I was like, oh my God, So it's not that I can't, I actually don't want to do it. That's why it's not happening, because I don't want to do what needs to be done to achieve this.
Yes.
So then it's like, well, how much do I want this? Do I want to do what I'm really good at and what I really enjoy? Or do I want to get to some milestone really unhappy and pushing myself every day, in which case I wouldn't have got there anyway, because it's not my natural inclination. And so that was a real turning point for me to go, oh my God, just do what you want, and try things that you want to try, and different. I really believe my life is in seasons, and I always say to people, what I'm saying I'm into right now, don't hold me to that, because in a year's time I could be completely somewhere else. And that's the adventure that I want my life to be. I want it to be flavoursome, but I can do that because I don't attach changing my mind, trying something and not working, any of those things to failure.
I really believe that to be true, because I'm not proud of this, but a lot of hiring and firing, and not just with, and I mean 1099s is a little bit different, but I'm pretty quick to be like, nope, not a good fit. Amazing interview, and we started, and day 2, it's just ungodly terrible, and I'm like, no, gone. Service providers for me, ways to get systems and processes in place that I was like, I just don't even know if we match on just a human level. See you later. But I don't attach that, and I would attach that to failure 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But I'm so past that now, and it enables me to just be, it's almost like I've checked that box.
Yeah.
Now I already know, the warning signals and the tremors are going to be there in advance next time I kind of lose my way.
Yeah.
And then I'll be able to make a better educated decision. So I completely agree with that. Now, what I want to ask you though is, you fell in love with this idea, and we always say in the military, don't fall in love with your plan because it could go to shit, right? We also are very calculated, very structured, very rigid, very plan oriented. You're saying, I wanted to do this. I wanted to go to the States. I felt the energy, and I felt it as soon as I got here today too. And then your kids had your back. What about the people that would say that's just straight up irresponsible because I could go to San Diego tomorrow, imagining I'd never been, and be like, honey, I love it here. Fuck it, let's go. Tell me about that.
Yeah, look, enormous amounts of judgment, because remembering that I was living here and my kids were living in Australia.
Yes.
So I was more here than there.
Yes.
And so, people were, if you wanted, have a dig at someone, I was like the perfect person. You could really go to town on what I was doing. But, I think that with that, and I have insecurities about a whole lot of things in my life, but one of the things that I don't have an insecurity about is who I am as a mum. Mm-hmm. And I have always said that I want my kids to chase their dreams regardless of how risky they are. I want them to do what makes them happy. And I always felt like I'm no one to tell them what to do. I'm only someone to show them. So if I looked at it and thought, if I could only give my children one bit of advice, if I was only allowed one thing to say, I would say, regardless of how unlikely it is for your dream to come true, go for it anyway, and just see what happens. Don't hold back and go, I always wanted to be this, but I went and became a doctor instead. Yep. Just do it, because you'll be okay. You'll be okay. And so I thought, well, if that's my main bit of advice, who am I to give that advice if I'm not doing that? Who I cannot possibly do that. So I was like, I'm giving them a front row seat in dream chasing. I have a dream. I have no backing, like everything that I've ever done. I've got nothing that really makes sense or supports me, but I'm just going to go for it, and I'm going to chase the dream and see what happens. And you have got a front row seat. And I'm so proud of that. And so I knew, and I would talk to them all the time about what I was doing. And if any, look, the other thing is that they were at a time in their life, and our family was in a situation where everyone was cool. Like everything, all the kids were in a good space. I had an opportunity. And I know some families don't necessarily have that because, there might be some stuff going on with their kids or whatever. And I had that privilege. And so I put it to them. They were like, Mum, you got to do this. And we made it like a family project.
Yep.
And so when people would say some really gut-wrenching things like, do you miss your kids? It's like, what the fuck? Like, of course not. Like, why would I miss my kids? It's like, or is it hard? Shit like that where you're just like, can you ask me something interesting? Like really, like what do you want me to say?
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of that, and most of the time I was pretty good with that. Towards the end, when I was getting really worn out, that was starting to take its toll. And when I was getting, there were times towards the end where I was thinking I might not pull this off, and then what would come into my mind is I've sacrificed so much, and I'm not going to pull it off like this. And I remember saying to a performance coach who works with elite athletes. So I went and saw him and I said to him, I don't know. And I was at a point where I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. And I said to him, I actually don't know how I'm going to live if I don't pull this off. And I said, if I don't do it, what happens after that? How do I go on? And so it was like a grieving. It was like a intense, and he just said to me, and I was really I couldn't see.
I love it.
All I could see was this dark hole that my life was going to go into because I wouldn't have been able to pull this off. And he just said to me, well, you just need to find another way. And if it doesn't work, you just need to find another way. And you just need to find another way. And
that's what I pay you for, sorry.
And I was like,
what?
Yeah, I just need to find another way.
He's right.
And so what I did then was I turned that find another way into the journey as opposed to this massive obstacle that I just couldn't break through.
Yep.
And then also like there'd be moments where I'd call the kids and they'd be like, I don't want to go, I don't want to leave my friends, and you just feel like your heart's being torn out. But I knew more than anything in the world that this experience would change their lives, would expand them so much. And already in 6 weeks, they love it. What they're learning and what they're exposed to is incredible. So you know what? It doesn't matter. If I have to go home next week, like I have won with this.
Exactly. Like that's, and I don't need to ask it. Like that is the upside. I have a feeling that while you say you could crush it and things could be good and you'd be cruising, like that's a nice thought, but the actual upside is, did we all go through this together? And I mean, as a family, that's incredibly unique. And I would say everything you were saying, all I kept thinking about was like, they're learning ownership at like an unbelievably young age. Like they have skin in the game. Yep. They pushed you forward as well. You discussed it with them like adults essentially, and they're like, okay, so if it doesn't work out, like obviously yes, like the majority falls on you, but they signed up for this as well, and that's a tough lesson to learn really young. Now, I want to finish with this, which is you took this risk and you're doing everything, and you are okay with risk. You are not necessarily risk averse. And all we've been talking about is how do you prepare for everything if it doesn't work out? And we've kind of covered that. But what do you need to be prepared to do on the front side as you've determined I'm ready to take a risk? Like, do you need to make some downsizing decisions? Like, what are some of the key things that you need to...
Some more practical
Exactly.
things. Well, I think the very first thing, and this is something that I am terrible at and have been working on, is, and this is what this same coach said to me, and I was like, I'm not doing this. You need to look after the people around you. Mm-hmm. So how he explained it to me was that I was basically saying to people, and I'm not so much the kids, but other key stakeholders in all of this, okay, get in my boat and we're going to go off. Don't worry about the life jackets. It's all good. You don't need to worry about where we're going. It's going to be amazing. And they're all sitting there going, is this safe? And where are we going? And what's ahead of us? And I'm like, don't worry about it.
Yes,
it's totally fine.
yes.
Trust me. It's fine. Because I'm like, it's going to be fine. But for other people who do have an aversion to risk and do want stability and security and have a mindset of that, this is the way that we live, that is really putting them in a very difficult position. And I did not respect that.
Yeah.
I was very much like, just come along, like, I'm all over it, don't worry about it. And I felt that. I truly felt that, and I truly felt that they were safe, and that, you know, if everything went to shit, I would somehow fix it. So it's like, don't worry, I will fix it. And I truly believe that. But that's not okay for someone who's not like me.
Yep.
So I didn't respect that. So I think if you're going to go and do that, and especially your audience who have had a career where there is that security around and structure around, this is how we work and this is what you will get for your work, all of those things, the family has to be okay with this, because if you're fighting against your family, it's going to be really hard to do.
Yep.
So I think that's one side. Like yourself, you know, there are certain things, like you moved back in with your in-laws or moved in with your in-laws, and so you have to look at, like, I had to, anything you want to do, you have to sacrifice.
Yes.
And sacrifice could be where you live. For me, it was being away from my children.
Yep.
For someone else, it might be the car they have, like whatever it may be. But with any amazing reward, there's risk, and with risk, there's sacrifice. 100%. There has to be sacrifice. And I think this is something we need to be talking to our younger generation, or anyone really, more and more and more, because people seem to think that they want everything now and they want everything, but they don't want to sacrifice.
Yep.
And so...
Not the result, not the process.
Exactly. And the sacrifice is actually where the reward comes from, and it's where the learning comes from and the growth comes from. Like the moments that I was here on my own, like my heart torn apart being away from the kids, but also, so every time I'd left them, I was like, my heart's being ripped to pieces, but I'm also excited to get back to where I want to be. It was this juxtaposition. So I'm like, I'm mental. Like I am totally mental. I felt like everything was being torn apart. And what was I going to say about that? Now I've lost my train of thought. But so with that, and being able to look and go, those dark, that's what I was going to say. The really dark moments when I was here on my own, and New York, as busy and vibrant as it is, it's a very, very lonely city.
Yes.
And so there were really dark moments where I was just so lonely and torn, and what am I doing? But they were the moments. They were the moments where I grew the most and I learned the most. And I remember there was a point where I would, you try to get away with bad feelings. So I would get on social media, or I'd go out for a drink, or I'd try to do anything to distract myself from feeling so dark. And then I realised that, no, this is how I'm meant to be feeling.
Yes.
So embrace it. And so that's when I was like, no more putting that aside. I'm going to really get into this feeling. And I used to walk the streets of Manhattan with really dark, depressing music and cry my eyes out walking the streets and on the subway, just like really in it, because I was like, this is what I signed up for.
Wow.
And this is the sacrifice and the experience. This is actually what it's about. It's not about getting the kids here, although that was, amazing. It's not about all this stuff. It's the stuff that's going along, because that is what makes me who I want to be for the next thing. So I learned a lot about not hiding from the pain.
One of my clients released a book recently called Deliberate Discomfort, and essentially it's just becoming comfortable being uncomfortable, and how that's where growth occurs. And I know there's a lot of ways we all kind of spin that, but that's exactly what you're talking about. Like, no one wants to actually feel, like 100% feel those moments where you're saying you're listening to the dark music, you're in the subway, you're very lonely in a huge, like the most well-known city on earth. So, I mean, I applaud you for that.
And at the same time, people would see my pictures and go, she's just living this incredible, amazing life. She's free. She's going out to beautiful, bars and nightclubs like that. It's just bullshit. I wasn't doing that. I was crying on the subway pretty much every night when I would be going on my way home. But once I learned to embrace that, then I really started, and that's not just, that's like with anything with life now. So I was really afraid of the pain, and I really tried to not feel it.
Yeah.
And when I sort of went, no, but this is what it is. I'm meant to feel this way.
That's crazy.
And so for people who are scared to make this change and are scared of the risk, you're meant to be scared.
Yes.
It's scary and it's risky. And yes, like bad shit could happen. Probably won't. It probably won't. It's more likely not to.
Yeah.
But it's totally fine to feel like you're making the wrong decision and that you're being irresponsible and that everything could go wrong. It's normal.
I
So
know.
go, yep, I feel that way, but step aside because I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah. Where and we'll wrap up. Where can people find you? On social. Reach out if they wanted to. Where are you on social? I mean, I know these answers, but for the audience.
Yeah, probably the best place is to get me on Insta at @cell_watts. There's a number of other places, but if you go through there, I'm putting lots of content on there, not as much as I should be. I say that in front of you because you are just smashing it.
Hey,
I just
sorry,
love what
Instagram.
you're doing.
I'm falling out of love with Instagram right now. So I mean, I'm loving TikTok right now. So if you're not there,
I'm not.
Especially, and you got 3 perfect people to help you.
I know the kids are on it.
Are they?
Yeah. And so one day I signed up and I put on the family WhatsApp channel. The mum is on TikTok. The mum. They call me the mum. And the mum. And one wrote back, went, "Oh my God, you're so embarrassing."
Yeah.
And the other one.
That actually makes for famous parents.
Yeah,
on the platform. They flip that. My kids don't want me to be on TikTok. 2 million views.
Well, my youngest, who's 7, who says he wants to be a YouTuber, said to me that he said to me yesterday, "Mum, to be big on YouTube, you need to have some merch and you need to have a whole lot of balls in your house that you can jump into," because I think the YouTubers he watches all have fill their lounge rooms with those balls and jump in them. I was like, that's what I need to do. It's like I've got it all wrong. My content is all wrong. But yeah, so Insta is a good place to start.
Great. Well, thank you very much for all your time. I want to part with one message. Which is simply this, for the audience. Everything she's talking about and coming out of the military and having, I always like to call it Act 2 of your life. I think what she said is exactly right. Like if it feels wrong and you're able to kind of go with it anyway and rationally accept the fact that there could be massive consequences in either direct or massive consequences or massive upsides, then that is literally part of growth. Like if you don't experience that and you experience it unintentionally, it's literally like getting a fucking flat tire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's the most inconvenient thing of all time. But if you're going and regularly rotating your tires and all this other stuff and you happen to get one, then you're just like, oh, cool, it's fine because I know I'm taking care of my car.
Yeah.
But anyway, I understand the feelings associated with the transition in entrepreneurship, and I think you nailed it. So thank you for that.
And also, I want them to think about that life is too short and life is too long, and just back yourself and have a crack because it's why we're here.
That's why we're here. All right. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, man.